Good evening and welcome to the 209th annual meeting of the Athenaeum. So thank you all for being here. You are all in a long line of shareholders of the Athenaeum, and we have some members as well, shareholders and members watching online as well. So thank you and welcome. I'm Jeff Cooper. I'm the president of the Athenaeum and chair of the board. You'll hear from me a little bit later, but to start our meeting off, I want to call on Beth Hessel, our executive director, for her report.
Thank you, Jeff, and welcome. We have a number of new years at the Athenaeum. We have January 1st, the calendar new year. We have July 1st, which is our fiscal new year. We have September right after Labor Day, which is the new year for our programming season. But for me, the annual meeting really feels like the start of a new year. It is one of my most favorite days of the year when our room here is just filled with shareholders like you. And some of you I get to see once a year at the shareholders meeting, others I see all the time. So thank you for being here this evening. It's an exciting evening, although it is the 209th annual meeting. We are celebrating 210 years of the Athenaeum, which is pretty amazing. We are one of the oldest and longest serving member-supported circulating libraries in the United States. So I'm so grateful to each and every one of you who are here tonight, for those who are joining us via Zoom, and for those who may be watching us at a later date. Because of you, we're able to celebrate 210 years. I want to give a special welcome to our newest shareholders who are in attendance. If you joined in the past year, raise your hand. Look around and see, we are getting new shareholders. It's so wonderful to have you today. Here are some of the folks who have joined since our last annual meeting. And some of you are here today. We continue to grow as a community of legacy leaders, our shareholders, who feel a special connection to our history and to our present mission and our future vision. So welcome to all of our new shareholders, as well as our longstanding ones. If you've been a member for so long you can't remember when you joined, raise your hand. Wonderful, thank you. It's a joy. We have people here who've been members for 50 years, people who've been members for 2 days, and whatever length you've been, it's wonderful to have you here. So many of you have volunteered your time and your talents this last year on committees, or helping at the front desk, or helping behind the scenes. And if you are a volunteer, you'll see some people with a V and a circle. It's not very elegant, but it was kind of the best we did at the last moment. Next year, we'll have nicer name tags for you. But if you were a volunteer this past year, raise your hand. Let's give a thanks to all of these people. We couldn't do an annual meeting. We couldn't be a circulating library with nearly 2,000 members today without our staff and our board, who give tirelessly and joyfully to our mission to nurture curiosity and strengthen community through learning and discourse. Since our last annual meeting, we've said goodbye to 2 beloved staff members who headed on to other ventures, to Bruce Laverty and Tess Galen, and we're so grateful for all that they gave and contributed to the Athenaeum for many years. But we've also welcomed a fabulous new staff to our team, all of whom are delighted to provide you with the highest level of service, all of whom seamlessly fit in with our existing team, all of whom are just delights to work with and to get to know. And if you haven't gotten to know them yet, I hope you'll take an opportunity tonight to meet many of our new staff, Fiona Dawson and Alexa Perillo, who work in membership and development. Bryce Peterson helping out in the library, and Bryce is over there. Raise your hand. Alexa, you met when you were checking in. Christina Wilson, who is our new Gladys Brooks Curator of Architecture. Christina, raise your hand in the back. And you'll notice we were very careful this evening. If we're a first floor staff, we're all in black. And if they're in the second floor with the collections, any of the collections, the books or the architecture collections, they're very colorful. So you'll find your second floor staff by their color. Lee Gallagher and Pemi Aguda are at the front desk, and Lee is in the very back, and she just started about a week and a half ago, and Pemi you'll meet downstairs, and hopefully you'll come back in May for the release of her first book by Norton and Norton. That will be another fun program. And Patricia Altman, who started at the front desk, but as of this past week is now our brand new, in a brand new position of Director of Programs and Engagement, and Patricia is right back here. I also want to welcome our wonderful Drexel interns who are just fabulous. We have here with us tonight Aaron White and Lena Tran. If you'll wave your hands, they're both Drexel students. Also, we have Liz Lyons working in the library and Meijing Babcock Hunt. Perhaps you've come to one of the wonderful First Fridays that she has helped to plan. So thank you to everybody who makes all we do possible. This evening, you all are electing and welcoming new members to our board, and I'm excited for all of these new members. But we also want to show our gratitude to 4 directors who have served faithfully: Joan Countryman, Bob Link, Greg Montanaro, and Lee Shirk. I am so grateful to each of you and the wealth of knowledge and experience that you have brought to our shared work. And each of you gave generously of your time to serve on committees and attend meetings and provide me and your board colleagues with unstintingly wise advice. Each of you epitomizes the best of the board leadership, so thank you for your work. Now I've said my greetings and thank yous. Get to my talk. It really is a delight to see you all here. You've hopefully noticed on the walls, and if you were paying attention on the screen before we started, and not on the walls in here, but as you're coming up the stairs and maybe in the women's bathroom or the men's bathroom, you've seen some posters with quotes from some of our members at different membership levels and photographs talking about what they love about being a member at the Athenaeum. We ask these individuals to do this. And young and older, new members and members of longstanding, each delighted in sharing their perspective. And not surprisingly, some common themes emerged. So tonight we celebrate with them an intellectual community and a source of knowledge and discovery, a place rooted in history and thrillingly wide open to the future in an original, magnificent building. For there's no library in Philadelphia as beautiful or as warm as the Athenaeum. That was still in quotes from each of them. Tonight, we celebrate this amazing and resilient community and shareholders like you who have, since 1814, ensured that Philadelphia has a place like ours to gather for learning and conversation, for reading and work and play, to come together for inspiration and wonder. And as we gather also, I hope that you will be inspired by what you see and what you hear in conversation with one another, to take one of the cards that we have right outside this door and fill out yourself what you love about the Athenaeum and why it matters, and stick it in the box so we can share even more stories about why the Athenaeum is valuable and meaningful to you. Because the lovely ways that we hear you all describe what the Athenaeum means to you reflects the vision of the Athenaeum's founders. According to the Athenaeum Minute Book, in February 1814, quote, towards the end of the year 1813, several young men wishing to establish a set of reading rooms in the city of Philadelphia commences a subscription for that purpose. These men, more than half of whom were under the age of 30, which may be surprising to our current membership, which has tended to be a few years past 30. They had great dreams They had huge dreams in a city that was largely run by older and more established men and women. They wanted for themselves and others who had a similar dream a place of useful and agreeable resort. Much like today, when a place like the Athenaeum is a gem in a city and a world that is increasingly disconnected from genuine face-to-face interactions and from actual connections to the physical and material objects of learning and engagement and ideas. During the 19th century, society was becoming more private and domestic and less communal and public. And so if you were not privy to those homes with staff and that could host salons and gatherings, you had few places to go where you could connect with others who had shared interests. So 210 years ago, our founders wanted a place that did not yet exist for professional, hardworking adults. They wanted gracious rooms with a strong assortment of books and periodicals to provide access to useful knowledge about the most recent developments in science and agriculture and technology and transportation and the arts. And they wanted room to sit and stay a while. They were professional men of literary pursuits, as any young professional man was in the early 19th century. They wanted a place where they could write and share their essays with one another while socializing with their peers. They wanted a place where they could play chess. They wanted a place to dream. They wanted a place to meet other smart and literate and engaged individuals. What they wanted was a respite from their daily strivings in the tumult of a vibrant city. They wanted a temple dedicated to Athena, the goddess of wisdom. They wanted what we today are calling a third place. 210 years ago, the Athenaeum was a feisty little upstart project modeled after its slightly older siblings, the Liverpool and the Boston Athenaeums. But they were in a city that led this young country in the creation of cultural institutions. For much of its first 2 centuries, few thought that this library would survive the constant changes in society as it struggled along, especially as most of its sister institutions closed their doors. But we're here. We are here, busy writing the next chapter of a strong and vibrant organization that is now making waves and charting a path into the future. Today, we can resoundingly affirm that that original vision 210 years ago for an inspiring place for respite and connection and learning is as vital as ever. In 1847, upon completion of the founder's dream of an Athenaeum building, President Isaac Thomas Wharton, who had been there since the very first days, dedicated this beautiful brownstone on Washington Square, which was then still sort of in the heart of the city. Although all but the second floor was rented out to tenants, Wharton expressed the hope, among other things, that women would be allowed to membership. So look around you today, and thank goodness we finally were. But also that one day the Athenaeum would have full use of its new building, with space to include a lecture hall, exhibition spaces, rooms for conversation, and various other valuable purposes. The institution will then, Wharton said, bear a nearer resemblance to those establishments of Greece and Rome from which it derives its name. It's pretty cool, isn't it? I think that we hearken back to what men and women were doing in ancient Greece and Rome, and to maybe what people will be doing thousands of years from now, seeking places to gather for knowledge and learning and community and connection. The Athenaeum finally gained full access to our building about a generation ago. And in November 2022, as you remembered, we celebrated the completion of a campaign that created new and improved spaces for reading and studying and engaging, new spaces that capitalized on the strategic efforts of the previous 3 years during a global pandemic to better serve you through more and diversified programming, through an improved website and expanded membership options, increased hours, and a staff that was fully dedicated to creating a hospitable place of useful and agreeable resort. Those efforts have opened our doors to our future, even as we are ever more deeply connected to the dreams of our founders. Amazing, isn't it? That aligning our mission with the visible needs of the community surrounding us has brought us ever closer to that original vision of those who started the Athenaeum back in February 1814. But these efforts have proved largely and hugely successful. While membership had been declining for years, averaging about 60 new members a year between 2014 and 2019, fewer than the number of members that were lost each year, those numbers started to climb soon after 2019. And they boomed once we had our reopening after the renovations. Last year in 2023, we welcomed 512 new members. Amazing, right? People were worried, would the Athenaeum make it? We are thriving. Those young men who started the Athenaeum understood that the health and the vitality of their institution, as well as the robustness of the city that they loved, depended upon strong relationships and connections between older and younger residents. It was young men who started the Athenaeum, but they quickly brought in some of their elders to keep this place going and to keep everybody learning. And our current demographics reflect that vision. As 20% of our new current membership are now under the age of 35 and eager to engage with all of our membership. In fact, we have a few of those as shareholders here in the room tonight. Raise your hand. A couple here. We're so glad to have you here. With the majority of new members, however, joining at the subscriber, young friend, and student levels, we have a marvelous opportunity, not just me, not just the board, but every single person here tonight. We have a marvelous opportunity to encourage our newer members to move up and become shareholders. Like you, people who are committed to the history and the future, to this legacy that we carry at the Athenaeum. You also have an opportunity to invite your friends and your neighbors and your family and your coworkers in order to enlarge that roster of shareholders among us. And so I encourage you to consider doing that. 210 years after its founding, after ages fighting a reputation as a sleepy, stodgy organization, how many of you can remember people saying that about the Athenaeum not too long ago? We're now abuzz with energy. Like our founders, you love to spend time at the Athenaeum. With a gracious lounge and ample space to set up work, to study, or to write in the reading room. With a stupendous collection of books that address your reading desires. And as shareholders, you also have access to the University of Pennsylvania collection, which just expands even more, as well as our ebook collection. With circulation numbers that have doubled just in the last 2 years. So thank you, all of you who are checking out the books as well, so they don't just sit there on the shelves. That is wonderful. And countless opportunities to challenge your mind through programs and exhibits. You all have helped the Athenaeum to breathe again. It is beautiful. I have told some people when I started here, it felt a little like a mausoleum. And there's so much, so much energy. See it, so much energy. I get so excited. There's so much energy these days with people coming into the space. It is wonderful. It is what this building was intended for. Where once we might have delighted to see maybe 20 people in a week come into the building outside of programs. In March, this past month alone, we had 500 people use the Athenaeum exclusive of programs. So not only are people joining, but you're coming here and making use of it and not just saying, oh, I'll come once a year for the annual meeting. So it's wonderful to see all of you. And I am absolutely thrilled that attendance numbers at programs have finally rebounded from that post-pandemic slump that we and every other organization I know faced when we went back to in-person programming. You're signing up in high numbers for speaker series programs, for music and movies and classes and social events. And it's wonderful to see you all here for opportunities to engage and learn. Our staff loves to welcome you when you arrive. 210 years on, the Athenaeum has become the place for our Philadelphia-centered members to spend their days and for our suburban members to hang their hat when they're in town. That, to me, is something to celebrate. 210 years ago, our founders dreamed of their little temple dedicated to the goddess of wisdom, becoming an important home for scientific and historical collections, much like the Boston Athenaeum, which became a renowned art collection space. After years of failing to do so, the Athenaeum embarked on its current role as the preeminent home for the study of Philadelphia architects and architecture about 50 years ago. And our board and staff are excited for our renewed focus on making these collections more visible, more accessible, with their rich stories that are contained within them, more amply told to broader audiences in the coming weeks and months and years. It is exciting what we have in store. Likewise, we continue that careful stewardship of this beautiful building, which is being used as it's meant to be used, but also being cared as it needs to be cared under the care of our building committee and Christina Doe. This beautiful building whose intentional simplicity, it was designed to be chaste and simple in its design, was what the board asked for, has stood the test of time, whose new outdoor lights also serve as a beacon welcoming people in. So we continue to make sure that this building will be here for centuries to come. So, you know, when I began my role at the Athenaeum almost 5 years ago, it seemed like very few people in the city had heard of us. Those who had almost uniformly had negative views of us, or I don't know. What is it? Why do you go there? And that was a little disheartening. But today, you can't go very far without meeting people who are passionate about our little library that could. The buzz is wonderful. And some of that is because all of you are telling your friends and spreading the good news. So I hope that each of you, as shareholders who carry the legacy of the Athenaeum across multiple generations with your shares, feel as much pride in other people's joy in discovering the Athenaeum as I do. As we embark on a new year and into the rest of our meeting this evening, I want to close with a quote from one of the Athenaeum's founders that rings true today. Echoing the sentiments of today's members, the founders saw the Athenaeum as, quote, an abundant source of refined and elegant entertainment, of rational occupation, and of permanent usefulness, containing a rich mine for general research and a various and inexhaustible fund of knowledge from which the stockholder may, at his or her own option, derive an intellectual dividend of any magnitude. 210 years on, that is who we are and who we are aiming to always be. So thank you for sharing in this vision this past year. Thank you for joining us as we embark on a new one. Thank you for being here this evening to celebrate 210 years of the Athenaeum of Philadelphia.
Beth, thank you for your remarks, and thank you as always for what you do in leading this organization. Next, we're going to hear from Mike Horgan, who's our treasurer, to give you a report on how we're doing. So, Michael.
Good evening, shareholders. My name is Mike Horgan. Sorry, I thought I did it. There we go. My name is Mike Horgan. As the treasurer of the Athenaeum, I have the honor of presenting you with the financial report for 2023, the fiscal year 2023 that ended in this past June 30th. First, Beth and her staff deserve tremendous credit for yet another year of producing an operating profit in the face of an increasingly unpredictable economic environment. At last year's annual meeting, when we were 10 months into this past fiscal year 2023, we noted that the fiscal year was turning out to be even more difficult than the previous year, as inflation and the stubborn bear market inhibited the broad economy. Additionally, not only did the majority of our building improvement costs fall into 2023, but declining market valuations lowered our endowment draw, creating pressure on our staff to aggressively manage spending in order to maintain a balanced budget. In spite of these challenges, the Athenaeum was able to deliver a budget surplus of $195,000, which I think we have. Oh, we don't have the financials up, sorry. If you on the handout of the financials, you can see our budget surplus of $195,000 for the past fiscal year. I attribute this surplus, which went into our reserves, to unprecedented membership growth during the final 2 quarters of the fiscal year 2023, a strong response to the matching gift appeal last spring, both of which increased revenue, as well as tight cost saving initiatives applied. The cost savings were driven by lower personnel costs created by some staff vacancies last year, as well as the realization of big savings by the shift to new health and benefits insurers. This resulted in a leaner staff providing expanded programming and services to our fast-growing membership. This current fiscal year 2024's top budget priority has been to address those staff vacancies that emerged to properly staff the Athenaeum in order to support the expanded membership and engagement. In this current fiscal year, the endowment's value has surpassed the baseline it achieved before the drop in the valuation during the 2021 COVID-19 pandemic. The valuation is actually $3.5 million higher than it was in June 30th, 2020. Given the rebound from the market downturn, that rebound is due in no small part to the new PNC investment managers, who, under the expert guidance of Adele Gorilla, the chair of our investment subcommittee, has taken a more hands-on and proactive approach to our endowment management. While the boost in the operating income from the endowment growth, membership growth, and vital support above dues payments by so many of you has given us more support in the operating budget, Beth has been able to hire new development and programming staff and continue our efforts to ensure all staff receive industry standard pay and benefits so that the Athenaeum can continue to provide the array of mission-driven programs and services that you all value. While we made it through the past fiscal year 23 with a surplus and are currently experiencing a friendlier economic environment, I would like to stress that by no means it indicates that the Athenaeum is content with the status quo. We have enjoyed the fruits of the completed building enhancements, but there is more to be done in order to fulfill the potential of the great space we occupy that was envisioned by our founders, by the shareholders who spearheaded the erection of our current building in 1847, and by our current leadership. In total, the 2022 building renovations were tailored to meet our $1.6 million campaign budget, but further future planned enhancements that would provide more usable space for study, learning, and community will require a huge commitment from all of us. All right, now onto the pie chart. So this chart illustrates that 5% of our endowment draw, which is about $580,000 last fiscal year, only covers about 37.5% of our annual budget. This is because about 90%, partially because about 90% of our endowment is also restricted by the donors to spending on specific expenses such as the Moss Symposium, Petership Fellowship, Peterson Prize, architectural collections, and book funds. So those restricted funds can only be used for restricted purposes, leaving us to rely on other funding sources to cover the other 62.5% of our budget. The takeaway from these figures is that we cannot rely on our endowment alone for either maintaining a balanced operating budget or funding for future investment in our space. We depend on dues and contributions from members and friends to be able to support our membership and drive enhancements. Continued support from our membership is the only way that we will be able to further our goals, and we hope that these past few years of delivering both improvement and conservative financial management has built trust in Beth and her staff's ability to make the most out of your contributions in a way that you are able to tangibly see the results of and enjoy. This concludes the treasurer's report. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions from the report? No. All right, we're good. Thank you.
So being the treasurer of an organization like the Athenaeum can be a thankless and difficult job. And Michael, thank you for the remarkable attention that you give to our finances every day. It's really appreciated, and I think I don't want to overstate the results, but your commitment to being careful with the funds is demonstrated by the numbers. So thank you very much. With that, new board members will be proposed by our governance committee chair, Scott Donahue. It's a good thing to be a board member of an organization that has a surplus. I know sometimes you're often asked to be a board member and bring your, well, you know, sometimes it's different, but this is a good night. Scott?
Thank you, Jeff. I'd like to start by having all current board members stand to be recognized. The board of the Athenaeum is a working board that Beth and her staff rely on for our participation. It's not just a check writing board. And so I want to thank everyone for their service as board members. As you see on the screen and was mentioned previously by Beth, we do have four board members who are completing their terms. Joan Countryman, Bob Link, Gregory Montanaro, and Lee Shirk. I'd like to point out that Bob Link and Lee Shirk are past presidents of this organization. Bob Link has been a board member since 1982. That's 42 years. And Lee Shirk at the bottom there, she's been a director since 1985. So we're going to miss both of them, but they've been just stalwart supporters of the Athenaeum for so many years. I'd like to turn now to electing this year's slate of new board members. Has everyone had a chance to fill out a proxy? Is there anyone who has not and feels they want to do so now? Seeing none. I will just review the slate with you. Nominated to serve 1 year left of a term is Nora Barry. And then there are 7 directors to serve until 2027. They're also on the screen: Justin Detweiler, Adele Gorilla, Mary Hawksworth, Kelly Lee, David Rowland, Lynn Swartz, and Lucy Strackhouse. And the votes have been tallied. Beth just handed those to me. We have 105 yes votes. We have 2 no or blank slate proxies, I suppose. Those of you who are here that are named in that slate, if you would please stand. Thank you. And we look forward to having them serve on our board. Thank you very much.
So good evening again. And thank you again to the shareholders who are here in person and to shareholders and members who are joining on Zoom for our 209th annual meeting of the Athenaeum. Again, I'm Jeffrey Cooper, the president and chair of the board of directors. In that position, I was able to adjust the agenda to be sure that I didn't follow Beth Hessel's talk. So, since this is my first opportunity, since being elected to this position by the board, this is my first opportunity to address the shareholders. So first, let me express my thanks for this honor and for this responsibility. During this year, I've had the opportunity to meet many of you, and I look forward to speaking with more of you. I continue to learn about the history of this remarkable organization and to look forward to an exciting and vibrant future. Since this is my first meeting, let me tell you a little bit about my own introduction to the Athenaeum. Like many of you, some of my earliest memories revolve around libraries. For me, those were the Bushrod branch of the Free Library of Philadelphia and the Northeast Regional Library. My home was midway between the two, and I visited both often. I also remember the magnificent staircase of the Parkway Central Library, particularly the room to the left when you went up the stairway and you saw that long array of the card catalog, which frankly I still miss. I have great affection and respect for the free library system. In addition to serving here, I am on the board of trustees and a director of the Free Library Foundation. And like all public libraries, our Philadelphia Library has an expansive mission and an obligation to provide not only books, but a variety of other services to Philadelphians. In law school at the University of Pennsylvania, the library had shelf after shelf of identically bound books. That's what's great about law libraries. They're so neat. Reporting hundreds of years of judicial decisions, and it just mesmerized me. Taken off the shelves and stacked high in front of me, I discovered the intricacies of legal analysis. Fortunately, though, I'm no longer practicing law, but I love that library. Today, I do work at Penn and have the great benefit, as all of you do, of accessing materials not only from the Van Pelt Library, but from the magnificent Fine Arts Library designed by Frank Furness and other library resources. And I make a point to visit libraries everywhere I travel, from the Little Library in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where my grandchildren hang out, to the Trinity Library in Dublin, and libraries really all over the world. About 5 years ago, my friend Ned Scharf, knowing of my affinity for libraries, asked me if I had ever been to the Athenaeum. Like many Philadelphians, I had a vague sense of an elite institution on Washington Square, but I had never been inside. When I finally followed Ned's invitation and entered the building, my impression was immediately changed. I was greeted warmly as soon as I walked in. An inviting room, now even more inviting on the left, had more magazines and newspapers than even I could absorb at one time. Across the hall was an exhibition space with interesting materials. That space is now even more welcoming with windows that open onto the square so you can see both in and out. Obscure Napoleonic memorabilia was displayed nearby, always interesting. And then I climbed the steps to the library and found not only a great collection of books, but people who wanted to talk about the books and about ideas. I was hooked even before I understood the extent and significance of the architectural archives and the collection housed in the basement and the third floor and throughout this building. The Athenaeum has been led by the remarkable Beth Hessel since that time. You've heard from Beth about the accomplishments of this past year and in recent years. So much of that progress is due to Beth's dedication, her commitment, and her vision to the Athenaeum, so that it is an asset to the entire Philadelphia community. That transformation is also the vision of my predecessor as board president, Ned Scharf, who introduced me to the Athenaeum. Ned was ill last year, his last year as president of the organization, so he wasn't at this meeting, but it's important to acknowledge the importance of Ned's vision, especially as a new person to Philadelphia in the transformation of what's going on here. Ned is traveling in Greece right now, but he along with Beth really motivated and led the transition. Now, like you, I've been to many meetings where you go, oh no, are they going to introduce people again and again and again? Well, I'm going to do that again, and I want to tell you why. It's important for you to know who the board members are. It's important for the board members to know who you are. I want you to talk to each other. I want you to get to know each other. I want you to share your ideas with each other. So identifying them again can only help do that. So it's an incredibly active and generous group. Every member of the board is involved on a committee, frequently attends events, greets long-standing and new members, and elevates the Athenaeum among Philadelphia cultural institutions. Again, I want to express my appreciation to retiring board members Lee Shirk and Bob Link, both of whom previously served as president, and both of whom are among the Athenaeum's longest-serving board members. Joan Countryman, whose quiet wisdom informed many of the Athenaeum's new initiatives, has been invaluable, and Greg Montanaro, whose counsel as a friend I have valued for many years, and for whom I gained much greater appreciation and respect as I learned from him about the Athenaeum and its history. I also want to thank David Brownlee, who previously served on the board and has continued to be an important volunteer and contributor and served on the search committee for our new curator. You've elected an excellent group of new members for the board: Nora Barry, Justin Detweiler, Mary Hawksworth, Kelly Lee, and Lucy Strackhouse, who I'm sure will add greatly to the board's activities. I'm also grateful for the support and work of my other board colleagues: Richard Bartholomew, who's chair of our building committee; Veronica Chapman Smith, I don't think is here, but is chair of the engagement committee; Jeffrey Cohen, who's chair of the collections committee; Scott Donahue, who you heard from on the governance committee; Michael Gary, Adele Gorilla, the vice president of the board; Michael Horgan, the treasurer; Nancy Moses, chair of our development committee; Matt Rader, chair of the library committee; Bernie Resnick, Ralph Rosen, who you'll hear from soon as chair of the literary awards committee; David Rowland, Lynn Schwartz, who's secretary of the board, and Bob Steiner. You can identify us all with these little name tags. So look for us. Please introduce yourself, and please share your thoughts about the Athenaeum with us. I also, as important as the board is, this place functions because of the staff. Beth mentioned some of them. I want to, again, Beth mentioned all of them. I am going to just mention a few of them, but I want to thank them all for their efforts every day to keep the Athenaeum functioning, open, and accessible to the community. Jill Lee, our librarian, knows the books that you want to read and finds a way to get them to you. Christina Doe keeps this historic building in great shape, despite the challenges of age and disruptions from neighboring construction. You know about that. Sometimes you hear the banging and yep. Jim Carroll runs the finest imaging center around, carefully digitizing our own collections and working with other special collections libraries and talented artists to secure their work. I'm excited to see the directions in which our new curator, Christina Wilson, takes our world-class collection to make it more accessible, more relevant, and more interesting to much broader audiences. And at the same time, I want to acknowledge the long dedicated service of Bruce Laverty, who played such an important and critical role in developing the collection and engaging with research scholars. Our growing staff includes Patricia Altman, Alexa Perillo, Fiona Dawson, and others introduced by Beth. They all have sort of blue name tags, so you could recognize them from that. And again, introduce yourself. Tell them your stories. Don't just write them on. Don't just write your story on the little slip out front. But we want to hear about what it is about the Athenaeum that resonates with you. As I mentioned earlier, during this year, I have spoken with many of you and have heard enthusiastic responses to the transformations in membership, programming, and vision. I've also heard concerns and questions about whether those changes will diminish the Athenaeum's role in preserving the architectural and cultural history of our city. When you join the Athenaeum, you become part of the history that began in 1814, when those few young men gathered for the first time for conversation and to build community. As you walk into the building, you appreciate the Athenaeum's place on Washington Square since 1847 and its role in the cultural life of this city. And as you walk through the building, you see highlights from the world-class collection of drawings, records, diagrams, and plans for building in this city and elsewhere. I think that's the Capitol Dome back there. The future of the Athenaeum, you should be assured, is fully informed by our past. Our goal is to continue to grow the membership of the Athenaeum, attracting younger people into our library where they can study, work, and connect comfortably. We have an active and vibrant young friends group learning about the city through conversation, tours, and other activities. At the same time, we continue to expand and diversify our programming to serve current members and attract new members. We have a regular series of movie discussions. We have book groups. We have a salon series with prominent Philadelphians talking about the advantages and challenges facing the city. We have classes on urban development, on Socrates, on other varied topics of interest to members. And yes, we even have a sewing circle that provides a great opportunity for socializing and meeting new people with similar interests. Folks, when the Athenaeum was founded, I think a sewing circle probably would have been a very popular activity here as well. So usage of our library, real books and ebooks continues to increase. And of course, we continue to expand our archival collection through carefully considered acquisitions that enhance and amplify our existing materials. We're committed to assuring that those materials will be cataloged and made available to scholars from all over the world who seek to learn more about Philadelphia and its history. We are not running from that responsibility. It is part of the history and part of the future of the Athenaeum. The membership, the programming, the availability of books, magazines, and other materials, and the collection are both our past and also our vision for the future. I'm confident that we can look forward with great enthusiasm and ambition for growth while respecting and continuing what has come before. I'm pleased that our executive director reported on membership growth, program expansion, building preservation, and collection growth. I'm pleased that our financial report was positive and optimistic, even with appropriate caution. I want to end my comments, however, focused on the future, focused on how we can collectively grow and expand the Athenaeum. Imagine you're one of those small group of founders and what they envisioned for the future, and think about what you envision for the future. We can't rely only on renewals by shareholders and members for our financial needs. We need your enthusiastic support to bring in new members and to encourage them to elevate their involvement by becoming shareholders. There are still people out there beyond the more than 500 that joined last year who you can bring in and have become members. We look to you to participate in our programs, to bring your neighbors and friends, and to communicate your interests so that our programming aligns with your enthusiasms. If you are part of the architectural preservation community or just interested in Philadelphia history, please connect with Christina Wilson so that she knows your focus and she learns as she learns more about our collection. And of course, if you're able and interested, we need your financial support to expand and diversify programming and keep and expand our hours and to host the convivial receptions that create the opportunity to connect with others. We need a stronger financial base. To do even more with our magnificent collections requires a stronger financial base. To remunerate our fantastic professional staff and ensure that we can build up a staff properly sized to serve our growing and increasingly active membership as our reputation grows also requires a stronger financial base. Shareholder and membership dues are just not sufficient to cover the kind of personnel, attraction, and connections that we would like to see. Cataloging, maintaining, expanding, digitizing our collections are expensive, not only in hard costs, but in personnel costs. To service the collection at the level it deserves requires creative approaches to fund development. If that is a priority for you, help us raise the money that we need to provide the services that we can. You have heard in past years about the enormous potential of this building if we proceed with phase 2 and phase 3 of the ambitious plans created by Kiernan Timberlake. Our endowment does not support that activity. We need to look to individuals, businesses, foundations, and other sources for those funds. But imagine what can be done up on the 3rd floor in terms of making space and facilities available for a much wider range and diversity of events. We have not yet begun a new capital campaign, but we welcome your thoughts and your financial contributions to help make every part of this building useful and accessible. We will soon begin our spring appeal. Don't wait to get a call or letter from Beth or from me. You are welcome to contact us directly. Let's talk about how you can have your own unique impact on the future of the Athenaeum. Again, I want to thank you all for your participation tonight. I suspect many of you love books and libraries as I do, and felt what I felt when I walked in here. As Beth said, not a home, not just an office, but a place where we are comfortable and engaged. The third place is it's being called. Your appreciation of the past and your commitment to the future of the Athenaeum honors the memory of our founder and the many, many Philadelphians and others who have benefited from this organization. Just as those founders envisioned not only a place for their immediate desire for connection, but a permanent and vibrant institution for future generations, I invite you to consider what the Athenaeum is today and can be to our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, and to all of those who may join us in the future. Thank you for being an important part of extending those benefits to many, many others now and in the coming years. Thank you. Now let me introduce Ralph Rosen for the fun event of the meeting, the Literary Awards.
Thanks so much, Jeff, and welcome everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Ralph Rosen, and it gives me great pleasure to be here to announce the main event, the Athenaeum's Literary Award for 2024. So the Literary Award was established in 1950 by Charles Wharton Stork, who had a long career in Philadelphia as a poet and a translator, as I actually recently learned, a translator of Swedish and other Scandinavian poets, and was a board member of the Athenaeum for nearly 50 years from 1919 to 1968. So the purpose of this award is to recognize books of literary excellence, either written by authors who live, am I doing something? Yeah, live in the, just go away, just go away. I'm gonna leave that out. Is that okay? Yeah. Either written by authors who live in Philadelphia region or books that concern Philadelphia itself, its history, its culture, or society, either in fiction or nonfiction. Now, literary excellence is never an easy quality to pin down, and it's, as you can imagine, it's an ongoing topic of discussion among the members of the Literary Award Selection Committee. But briefly put, the award strives to honor books that are well-written, engaging, and accessible to a wide readership, and that offer new or unusual insights into its material. So my own involvement with the award committee began when our chair, Jeff Cooper, asked me to chair the committee last year, succeeding the intrepid Ned Scharf, again, who gets a second mention, who recently stepped down after having served as the committee's chair for 14 years, in fact, since 2010. I know he's not here tonight, and I think it's 1 a.m. in Greece, so I assume he'll have to watch a recording of this. But I just wanted to say that his enthusiasm for the charge of the committee and his understanding of the significance of this award continually inspired all of us. He facilitated serious, spirited discussions of the many contenders that we considered, but he also managed to make our meetings relaxed and collegial and fun, really. So our sincere thanks go to Ned for his long and distinguished tenure as committee chair. If he were here, we'd give him a round of applause, but we'll move on. I'd like also to recognize and thank this evening all the members of the Literary Award Committee for their dedication and hard work. Obviously, we're all on this committee because we love to read books, but working through quite so many books in the year that come in every year is another matter. So thank you then to my esteemed committee, Jane Fisher, Mary Hawksworth, Bill Yonch, Eva Loeb, Lee Rogers, Kathy Shelton, Leslie Zampetti. If any of you are here tonight, could you stand up and we'll give you a... Thank you, thank you, thank you. Finally, a quick shout out to our amazing librarian, Jill Lee, who keeps us organized and on track throughout the year. Thank you. Not an easy task, and one she manages with patience and good cheer. So thanks again, Jill. So, okay, now let's turn to the real main event. This year, the Literary Award Committee decided to make 2 awards, one for fiction and one for nonfiction, as we sometimes do when we have, as we did this year, so many contenders in both categories. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna announce each winner separately, beginning with the award for fiction. I know you got a little sneak preview, but just ignore that. Just unsee that. So separately, beginning with the award for fiction, And I'm going to call each winner up individually to the podium to receive their award and to say just a few words. So let's then begin with the Literary Award in Fiction. This year, the committee was thrilled to select the novel Rugman by David Amadio, published by Philadelphia's own Paul Dry Books, and Paul Dry is here too. Rugman is a wry, probably there was a slide up there, but whatever, is a wry comic tale of a carpet installer working what we might call a huge job from hell in the moneyed main line. The committee was immediately charmed by the novel's loving exploration of an unsung craft, the laying of carpet, through a protagonist inspired, as I've read, by the author's own father. Rugman is hilarious and poignant by turns, and its sensitivity to a variety of social issues, both provocative and humane. David has taught creative writing at Lincoln University since 2004 and is also a writer and performer with a three-man comedy troupe called The Minor Prophets. Rugman is David's debut novel, and what a debut it is. Congratulations, David, on this extraordinary achievement, and if you could come up to the podium to receive the award.
Good evening. I should have brought my glasses. Let's see if we can get through this. Thank you, Ralph, for that generous introduction. I know that we rehearsed it, but you did a wonderful job pronouncing my last name. If my grandmother Norma were still alive, she'd probably run over and pinch you on the cheek. She'd be very, very proud. Thank you to Beth Hessel and the rest of the Athenaeum shareholders for choosing Rugman as the recipient of this year's literary award. Your endorsement of the book, it means a great deal, and I appreciate you setting aside this time for me to accept the honor. Thank you to my son, Vincent, who is here, who never made me feel guilty when I would disappear for hours to write. Even at a very young age, he understood what I needed to do, and I respect him for respecting me. Thank you to my publisher, Paul Dry, who is here, the man responsible for bringing Rugman to a wider audience. After Paul read the manuscript, he sent me a one-sentence email that read, "I like Rugman and would like to publish it." That was it. I was scrolling down to see if there was more to the message, but that was it. I actually laughed at how short it was, but what more did Paul need to say? That was all Paul needed to say. Thank you to my father, Jerry, who is also here tonight, whose life and experiences are loosely chronicled in the book. He inspired the character of Frank Renzetti, but more than that, the example he set through nearly 50 years of sacrifice and toil inspired me to sit down at the desk every day and work, work, work. I did this because he showed me the way. And a special shout out to the pandemic. Yes, the old pandam. It took its fair share from us, but it did give me a hell of a lot of time to write. I don't know if I ever would have finished the novel without the splendid isolation of quarantine. So I say cheers to you, Anthony Fauci. You're a true paisan. Thank you, everybody.
So David can't have known how appropriate his final remarks were for our next award. So as you'll see, so we're going to now turn to the literary award in the category of nonfiction. So for this award, we've selected an incredible book that was not only written by a Philadelphia author, but also concerns a fascinating slice of Philadelphia history. This year's winner of the Athenaeum Library Literary Award for Nonfiction goes to David Barnes, who's over here, for his book Lazaretto, How Philadelphia Used an Unpopular Quarantine Based on Disputed Science. Here we go. Based on disputed science to accommodate immigrants and prevent epidemics, published by Johns Hopkins University Press. I think, by the way, we need to give this book another award for the most descriptive subtitle, or maybe the longest subtitle. In any case, the subtitle pretty much sums up everything you need to know about what's in the book. David's currently associate professor at Penn in the Department of the History and Sociology of Science, specializing in his research on the history of public health in 19th century Europe and especially in France. So a lazaretto, as I've learned from the book, was a term with origins in the early modern period for places of quarantine in times of epidemic. In Philadelphia history, the lazaretto refers to what is described as the oldest quarantine station in the Western Hemisphere and one of the 10 oldest in the world, which I learned from their really interesting website. And it's just down by the airport in Essington within Tinnican Township. I have a student who works on the history of ancient tuberculosis, and I had to email her just today to say, do you ever heard of this place? It's like, I said, this was in the who knew department. No, another thing to be grateful for David. This building, which still stands today and is open, as I've learned, for self-guided tours, was originally built in response to a series of devastating yellow fever epidemics in the last decade of the 18th century and was used as a quarantine station from 1801 to 1895. David's book charts this history in gripping detail, telling a story which is as much cultural as scientific and reminding us that the recent traumas of COVID-19 are hardly new. The debates over public health care policies, mistrust of experts, the social inequalities exposed by epidemics, and many more. The committee was continually impressed by David's meticulous research and deft writing, and are delighted to present him with this award. David, if you can come on up.
Thanks, Ralph, and thanks to the Athenaeum and the shareholders. Writer's Mixer was the subject line of an email I received in May of 2015, inviting me to an event here at the Athenaeum. I wondered what in the heck a writer's mixer was, but I was intrigued and I showed up, and there were about 40 people here, all writers and aspiring writers of various stripes. And at some point during the introductions, the host or MC said, "How many of you are writing nonfiction?" And out of this very full room, 4 hands went up, 4 brave, intrepid hands. Nancy Moses, Darrell Rastorfer, Margie Patlack, and me. And later we added Carol Schloss and formed a writing group, which I, years later, grandiosely baptized the Philadelphia Nonfiction Writers Collaborative. Thank you, Nancy. It takes a village. This book took, I'm not ashamed to admit, 16 years of research to write. There's only one name on the cover, but over the years, many dozens of students, colleagues, librarians, archivists, Lazaretto descendants, history buffs, and ordinary people visiting the Lazaretto site have shaped the book in ways both mundane and profound. Thank you, Jeff Cooper, who is one of those history buffs and Lazaretto fans. Thank you, David Brownlee. Thank you, Jeff Cohen. And thank you, Steve Peitzman. Just among the friendly, supportive faces I happen to see in the room here tonight who were involved in this book at one stage or another. It's deeply gratifying to receive this recognition from the Athenaeum, an institution that represents the best of our city's traditions and its highest aspirations for the present and the future. I'm especially thrilled to receive an award specifically targeted to Philadelphia because this book is a very Philadelphia book. It grew out of my long love affair with this city and its rich and tumultuous history. And if I have any words of wisdom for you, I would say, forget the founding fathers. We will never run out of Philly stories to tell. Triumphant stories, tragic stories, poignant stories, stories of ordinary people facing ordinary challenges with sometimes extraordinary results. And there's no end to those stories. Let's please keep telling them, finding them, uncovering them, and reading them. Thank you so much.
So we're almost done, but we have the pleasure of having a little raffle, I guess.
So yeah, so when the Literary Award Committee released its short list for the Literary Award, we put them all out there and we encouraged all of you to read the books and then vote for which one you thought would win. We're not going to tell you, we're going to draw somebody's name. We won't tell you which one they thought that should win in case it wasn't one of the winning books. That wouldn't be nice. But we are going to pull a name out of the hat and that person gets both of these signed copies of the award-winning books. So if you didn't do this, think about it next year.
Yeah.
Make sure you read the books. So you want to do the honor of drawing it in?
Ready?
Don't get your hand stuck.
I don't know if I... Yeah, there we go. Yeah, next year, bigger hole in it. Okay,
Drum roll.
the winner is Tess Galen.
Oh my gosh, a former employee.
Is Tess here?
No.
No, she's not here. All right, well, congratulations, Tess.
Tess will be so happy that you all didn't boo and say that wasn't fair, a former employee, but you know, if you know Tess, that she deserves these books, so that's wonderful. Next year, when the shortlist gets announced, read as many as you can and get your name in the hat for a chance to win some books. Thank you to David and David, which made it really easy, right? Two winners, David.
Our two Davids.
For your wonderful book. Okay, we're gonna get back on to the you know, when I started as executive director, Ned and I talked about the annual meeting, and it used to just be a lecture, but then we did so many programs. We thought people can come to a program when they want. Why not have an opportunity to celebrate the Athenaeum? And we're so glad you all keep coming back for that. But I personally think the Literary Award is the most fun part. I mean, it really reflects who we are as a community that is built around a culture of books and reading. But one of the most important moments in our annual meeting is our moment remembering those shareholders who left us this past year. When you become a member, a shareholder of the Athenaeum, your name goes into the record books. If your share 132, your name goes under the last person who held share 132, and so on down the line, so that you are part of this continuous line of people who've held your share through the years. That ledger book tells so many stories. And so each of you have your names in there, and each person who left us this past year, name is in there. And so they are remembered forever. They are part of the history. They are part of our archives, but they are also in our hearts. If we knew these individuals and interacted with them as friends, as neighbors, as partners or family members, just knowing that you're part of the same organization and walked the same city streets together. So I'm going to share the names and invite us to take a few moments in silence. If you see that there is a name missing of someone who died in the last year who was a shareholder of the Athenaeum, please let me or another staff know, because we also want to properly record that and remember that. But let us remember these friends. Thank you. Like me, you doubtless see so many names there that you recognize as leaders. People who led in the fields of architecture and academics and business and medicine. People who are joyful readers and joyful contributors to who we are as a city and a region. So it's good to remember them. And thank you for joining me in that. Now, I think our intrepid leader has an opportunity to set us free to go and party next door.
So like I said, we've all been at meetings where there's endless lists of introductions. There's always someone who says, I'm the thing that stands between you and the food. So that's where, actually, it's you that stand between you and the food. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. So moved. Then a second, then a second. All in favor? Thank you again to everyone for coming today.